We're back at home next, for whatever that's worth, where we'll play host to Manchester City. Kick-off on Saturday is 12:30pm, lunchtime as some of you might call it, or pre-breakfast as we call it here. BT Sport have the honour of broadcasting this particular match. Well, Manchester City, what of them? Their biggest result last season was wriggling out of the major punishment that was due for the liberties taken with the so-called financial fair play regulations. The problem was that, for the cases where the evidence was at its strongest, UEFA were time-barred from acting, thus proving that, whatever their level, football administrators the world over are incapable of organising a social gathering involving the excess consumption of alcoholic beverages in a premises singularly dedicated to the production and distribution of said beverages. On the pitch, it's been a mixed start to the season for them. At the time of writing, they sit in 11th spot, level on points but behind us on goal difference, though they do have a game in hand, having been given an extra few days off to finish off being knocked out of the so-called Champions League at the end of last season. Their first win came on what was for them their opening day, and it was away at Wolves, who might have avoided the 3-1 defeat that came their way had they been a little less profligate in front of goal. That game was followed up with the rather surprising 5-2 home defeat to Leicester, who caught them out with the same trick time and time again. They then failed to convert early dominance at Elland Road into goals in the plural, and Leeds came back to earn a deserved 1-1 draw. Last weekend they similarly failed to convert dominance into goals, prevailing as they did 1-0 over an obdurate Arsenal. They returned to so-called Champions League action on Wednesday night, where they beat Porto 3-1. Though our friend Anderson was an unused sub in that one. Daisy, the socially distanced personal assistant with the beautiful smile, informs me that they spent a shade under £123 million on first-team players during the last window, plus at least another £15 million on academy prospects, which kind of makes me sort of wistful for the days when academy prospects were kids you picked up who played around the back streets of wherever your home ground was. Out of all that money, something like £20 million was spent in Valencia to bring in winger Ferran Torres. Torres, who came on as sub and scored in the midweek tie against Porto, celebrated the signing of his new 5-year contract with the Citizens by getting a call-up for the full Spanish squad in the September round of internationals. He's quite keen at running at people, which is something that may cause concern, given our habit of backing off. Was anybody else surprised at either A, the arrival of Nathan Ake from Bournemouth, or B, the size of the fee that facilitated that move? No fewer than 40 million of Her Majesty's pounds formed the consideration for that particular contract. I'm sure Bournemouth won't be complaining at the size of the fee, which represents a cool profit of £20 million on their original investment. However, I don't recall him particularly standing out in his relegated side. Duty and tradition requires me to point out that he has Dutch caps at every level, from under 15 upwards. He currently has a bit of a groin problem too, which makes him 50-50 for this one. Like us, they considered further reinforcement to the central defensive area to be a necessity. However, having lost out to us in the race to sign Craig Dawson, they spent just under £62 million, plus Nicolas Otamendi, to bring in Portuguese international Ruben Dias. Dias, who has a string of high street home and hardware stores named after him, probably, made his debut in the Leeds match. Other than Ake, there are a number of big names currently sitting on the injured list. Most prominent of these is Kevin De Bruyne. Now, I don't care how big your squad is or how much money you have, when you have a player that good, he's always going to be missed when injured. I'm still scratching my head at how Henderson was selected ahead of him as Footballer of the Year. Actually, I'm scratching my head as to how Henderson gets international recognition at all. Benjamin Mendy hasn't had the best of luck with injuries in recent years, and he's some sort of muscular problem that will see him absent again this weekend. Gabriel Jesus, thigh, and Aymeric Laporte, muscle, are also big doubts. You can also throw Fernandinho into the definitely not playing list, as he came off late on against Porto, and it looks like 6 weeks will be the minimum absence period for him. So let's move on to the wild and wacky world of association football, which, it appears, is now solely run for the benefit of Liverpool Football Club. Now, don't get me wrong, Pickford's challenge on Van Dijk was poor and probably deserved the red card that it didn't get. And the offside was one of those that we've all been lumbered with from time to time since the introduction of VAR, but it was all the funnier for it ruling out a late winner. However, how arrogant and hypocritical is a club that feels it has the right to demand an explanation from the authorities? Join the club, suckers. We're all owed an explanation as to the dreadful refereeing in this country, in particular why Liverpool get away with blue murder every week. When the authorities have responded to the 10,000 or so inquiries of that nature from the rest of the league, then maybe Liverpool you can have an answer. Though with any luck you may have disappeared to the European League, which will be truly one for your own benefit. Another potential Euro League entrant, Manchester United, managed to cause complete and utter nightmare for any epileptics watching their so-called Champions League match against PSG. The Salford mob wore a kit of such dreadful design that it actually started to strobe, causing a surge in A&E admissions in the Croydon area. As for this Euro League nonsense, it would appear that the clubs involved also want to remain part of the domestic scene, something we usually call having your cake and eat it. Guys, if you want to go and play silly beggars with your fellow brands sur le continent, feel free to do so, but don't expect us to bloody finance it. It seems that latest scheme is some sort of backing from FIFA, though UEFA are dead set against it. Don't you just love political power struggles in football? Well, let's move on to us. Have you stopped laughing yet? No, me neither. Best quote of the week was one that commenced, "There goes the title," on one of the Tottenham forums. It probably doesn't occur to Tottenham support that the rest of football laughs at them so much, but in case they were wondering, those 4 words will give them a clue as to why. Of course, from our point of view, it's still great that we somehow managed to drop 2 points to Tottenham. My comment last week that the international break would do us no favours turned out to be correct, and it is to be hoped that the hangover from that will have been well and truly sorted out on the training pitch before this weekend. Much was made of the return of Bale and just how unfit he was. This proved crucial as he ran out of steam at the end of a run that put one in mind of a 40-a-day man trying to get a bus. Fair play, though, to Yarmolenko for getting back in time to put him off. Our problem in the second half seemed to be the quality of delivery in the final third. Good positions were frequently wasted, and Balbuena's header came from what was pretty much the first decent cross we'd put in all afternoon. After that, the second came in from a Kufal cross that saw Dawson damned if he did and damned if he didn't. The equaliser? Well, it will do, won't it? Pleased as punch for Lanzini. He's had a wretched time since that dreadful injury, so something like that will do him a power of good. At the time of writing, we do have potential absentees in the form of Antonio and Haller. Antonio's early departure saw him pictured with an ice pack on his thigh. This is a common sight these days and is often nothing to worry about. However, he did appear on the usual injury listings, and that is a bit of a concern, particularly since Haller, his obvious replacement, is rated as 50-50. What a shame there isn't some form of transfer opportunity at the start of each season whereby clubs could perhaps trade players so that squad depth issues could be sorted out. This match should see Said Benrahma's introduction to the squad at the very least. There may have to be some reshuffling as we try and convert someone into a striker if the usual suspects turn out to be unavailable. Prediction? Well, we'll need to be at the races from the start. Giving a 3-0 start to somebody as awful as Spurs is one thing, but you don't want to do that to this lot. Confidence will be high, of course, and we'll be playing a team that was in action over the midweek period, although that might have been more of a factor had they been in Portugal. Traditionally, this fixture has been carnage for us over the past few years, but they're not at their best at present, and we seem to be on something of an upward curve. A win might not actually be out of the question. After all, look at what Leicester did to them. The injury list is also significant. It was noticeable that, like us in the League Cup the other week, they were forced to name 2 goalkeepers on the bench for Porto. However, on reflection, I think I'll play safe, and I'll stick the £2.50 I was going to pay towards some sunglasses in advance of when we next play Manchester United, and I'll stick it on yet another of those 2-2 draws I seem to be so poor at predicting. Enjoy the game.